venit la CFology. Vorbim cu lideri financiari despre știința de a crește un business, a lua deciziile potrivite și a genera impact. CFology este un podcast produs de Business Mark, o companie de organizare evenimente business ce crede în puterea schimbului de idei și experiență între profesioniști.
Hi, I am Grigore Constantinescu, Internal Audit Partner in NOAA, and I'm happy to be the host of CFology podcast on a special occasion. You are listening to a special episode recorded live at CFO Conference Cluj-Napoca, an event organized by Business Mark, the producer of this podcast. I'm here at Courtyard by Marriott, Cluj-Napoca downtown, joined by Karel Cermak, Group CFO at Hecht Motors, who is one of our distinguished speakers today. Hi, Karel. Thank you.
Thank you, Grigori, for having me here. It's my pleasure.
So basically, Karel is a finance leader within 15 years, if I get correctly.
Exactly.
Of experience in financial management and internal audit also, so we have something in common.
Exactly.
And he is specialized mainly in the digital and financial transformation of companies, with extensive experience for also privately owned companies, if I get correctly speaking earlier.
Yes, it's true.
So, Karel, your presentation today is about building a CFO role in a family-owned company. Can you please tell us more about your perspective and what you consider to be the main particularities of this challenge?
Yes, thanks a lot. So, as you said, I'm 15 years in the financial management. I did most of my career I spent at L'Oréal, so the big multinational companies in several countries, also in the internal audit. And then I switched to a slightly different type of companies. So I now worked at two, which could be considered as a privately or family owned or one person owned. So the biggest challenge for me is at the very beginning for the owners to realize that they need a CFO, because there are still many companies and they can be multi-million, not just startup companies, that they realize quite late that the owners cannot be themselves the CFO, or just that the accountant cannot do the job.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And from your perspective, what are the differences in terms of corporate governance, we may say, between a corporation and a family-owned company?
From my side, from the side of the CFO, I realized that it's not about putting the standards low, but essentially the privately owned or the companies that I worked at, they don't really have processes. There is a lot of know-how or ways of working that are, I would say, lived, but nowhere put on the paper and not even formalized. That doesn't mean that the company is not under control. Typically, the owner controls a lot, or he delegates part of it, but nothing is written, and there are some obvious things that are not covered. So from the internal audit perspective, as you might have, of course, none of these companies that I work with would be able to have some very good rating in terms of the internal audit. But it doesn't mean that they are prone to fraud. But they have these challenges. And in terms of the governance, I think the most important thing for the governance is the trust. So the owners, it's his money, or if there is a family, it's the family money, and they delegate the power to manage the company to the managers. So essentially, as a CFO, as you are directly reporting typically to the owner, or there could be a CEO in between, you kind of feel more responsibility, because you are directly playing with somebody else's money. For at L'Oréal, it's the shareholders, the pension funds. Okay, there is a family also, but it's mainly you are directly responsible and accountable to the owner. So that's the interesting thing about the governance.
I see. And what about you said earlier about procedures, lack of procedures? I have two questions here. Do you feel them reluctant to write down the way of working and to draft procedures? One. And second, how do they feel about risks and control? Are they aware, usually the family-owned or the operational level within the family-owned company, are they aware of risks, control, or do you just go and do their job?
I think it's a mixture. So there could be part, it's not written because people never had time to do that, or they feel it's unnecessary, etc. And a lot of the things is lived, so they've been doing the process like this for the last 30 years, so they keep doing that. So that's one side of the story, that the machine kind of rolls and they don't need to change it. And second, there is in terms of the risk and control, very often the owner, or his right hand or left hand or who he has the most trust with, validates every single invoice, so nothing gets paid without the owner putting. It can either it can be a stamp, it can be a signature, it can be even electronic, but very often the owners, they keep very tight control over whatever is spent. And it's the kind of the legacy that they used to live from. If they manage the company for 30 years, they know very well, so they control everything. Of course, they miss a lot of things here and there, but there is the strict control. Nothing gets paid, and the bank is the point of control for the owners. That's my experience.
Interesting. And considering these particularities which you spoke earlier, what would you highly consider as the first crucial steps for a CFO while going into such a company and trying to integrate within their activity?
For me, it's the first thing, and I talked about it previously, is to build a trust. Mm-hmm. So you as a CFO, and even if you want to be the modern CFO, what are the trends? The business partner, the value creator, the one who pushes the business forward. You have to win the trust of the family, the owners, and etc. Because without the trust and transparency, you will not gain anything. So it requires giving you a bit of the power that he used to have, or somebody else in the company used to have. So for me, that's the crucial step. And with the trust, you start building up the function. So you kind of start, depends on the maturity of the company, you start saying there are certain layers of maturity of the finance function. So you realize, okay, are they audited, or is there accounting, does it exist? Of course, I came to companies that were bigger, and I was not the first CFO. And then you build up slightly the steps to be the value creation, depending on the maturity of the company. But for me, the first thing is to win the trust, because the CFO has to know everything from my side, and be able to, if there is a problem, highlight it, and be able to talk and identify whether it's business risk, compliance risk, tax risk, whatever, be able to communicate it to the owners.
And so, if I get it right, you find it a bit challenging, the environment. But how challenging it is for a CFO to balance the tradition of what they were doing with the growth, with scaling, with the reshaping the organization, and usually, who is the person that is more, let's say, open to help you within a company? Is it the owner or his children, if they exist or not, or involved? And who is the most, let's say, reluctant to help? Is the operational or the ownership?
I think the key here is to build some kind of leadership structure. And it could be, and at least bring on board some I would say, modern managers, because the owner they rely often on people who've been there through ups and downs for a certain number of years. They know the business, they have the experience, and they create value added. But I think it's good to have a mixture of people who know also about modern leadership, modern ways of working. Now we talk a lot about digitalization, productivity, people development, and all these kind of sexy modern things that maybe they are not needed now, but they are the future of each successful companies, that they need to outgrow what they are currently.
And while bringing, it's obvious it's a good idea to bring modern managers that understand the business and try to have a mix between them and the existing managers or operational level. But were you confronted so far with reluctance from the existing people that's saying, okay, I'm, for example, the accountant that manages the accounting as it is, and then you bring a head of accounting that should be in charge with controlling and stuff like that. Did you find reluctant people that would say, oh, I don't like it, I can't change my way of working, I'm leaving? And Do you feel that this would be, let's say, a risk of business continuity because you have key people in a company, in a business family owned, that were there since the beginning, that they know how things are going? If you bring on a manager, they might say, I can't like this, I'll leave, and the business more or less would be in the risk of stopping or have significant impairment if continuing.
First of all, I would say that everybody is replaceable unless he owns the keys from the building. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's a part of the creative process. So I've experienced a lot of people who were there for a long time. They knew their business, but they were not able to scale it up. So if you want to, let's imagine you want to double the company. And very often you will not be able to do it with the people that you currently have. You can find them a role that is slightly different. You don't have to fire, especially in these type of companies. You want to kind of praise the dedication and the long-term stay with the company. But if you want to do business development, explore new channels, or let me give you an example. You want to say, okay, I want to export to Romania, but the sales director doesn't speak any English or Romanian or any other foreign language. But he does the business well in the Czech Republic. So you cannot make him an export manager. You will have to find somebody else either under him, or you will have to reshift the role. So for me, if you want to be ambitious, you have to bring the people who are able to do it. With the current team, the FCSB or Cluj will not win the Champions League. If you want to win the Champions League, you need to bring a bit different players. If you are satisfied where you are, that's fine. You have the right players for that, and that's, I think, what the owners have to realize, and they have to realize it not just because somebody tells them, some consultant or their business partner, but they innerly want it themselves. Otherwise, they will never be able to transform or outgrow the business. I very praise the people who said, okay, they build hundreds of millions of euros worth companies. But if they want to make it double, it's a different story than when they are satisfied where they are. And then for that, you need different people. If you don't want to scale it up, you can rely on the team that you currently have. Probably you might not even need a CFO, the accountant, but might be enough. But if you want to, be ambitious in the growth, you want to finance, expand new markets, new ventures, new types of businesses, you need a bit different teams.
So, otherwise said, what got us here can't get us there. Yeah.
Very simple.
Simply, yeah. We all know that family-owned business and companies are often characterized by specific decision-making processes and a strong long-term perspective due to the fact that the owners are directly involved and they want some legacy. How do you feel that these unique characteristics influence the investment planning and overall financial strategies that you have to implement, for example, in your company, in Hecht Motors?
I think that's kind of the longer term vision in general. I think it's what characterizes this type of business. It's not about the quarterly earnings and do the sales today for better margin than do it tomorrow because of the investors and etc. So it's really the long-term perspective, and if you see a potential in the market in 2-3 years, it's better than when you are really following the short-term objectives. So that's what I see, and it's a great benefit of that. And of course, the pressure of the you have the pressure from directly working with the owner, but there is not the corporate analyst pressure, the pension funds, whoever owns part of the company. So of course, it's a slightly different world. So I really praise the long-term vision, often not wanting to sell the company because it's a legacy. They want to keep it for their children or put it into some trust and then manage it conservatively, and they are happy when people are happy. It's not this constant growing pressure. That's I think one of the things why people like to work in these type of companies and not just in like huge multinational corporations.
I see. And speaking about legacy, children, it goes to my next question regarding succession. Yeah, so basically, succession planning is one of the often most, let's say, critical in family businesses some of us, we also owners that were, let's say, very in control and refused to give up the business while they were alive towards their children. They didn't communicate with them too much or stuff like that, and then it was hard for the children to take over. So succession, in any how you make it, with parents alive or not, is very challenging for the children. And how involved, going to a CFO, how involved is the CFO in this process, in your perspective, and what role can they play to ensure long-term stability during this transition period from the first generation to the next?
I've never been in that situation where there would be something happening like this, but I believe that every single owner should have a plan. What happens if he gets hit by a car tomorrow? If it's going to be, who's going to, maybe even in the inheritance and in the governance. And I think my role as a CFO is to ensure that the company goes on if this type of thing happens. So and then again we talk about some at least fundamental governance structure, who's going to take over. So because the children, they might be young, or they might not even be willing to run the business. So I believe that the owner has to set it up how he feels it when he gets hit by the car. And then my role is to ensure that this thing is in place, and that I know who can decide what when the owner gets run over by a car. Not that I would wish anybody to happen, but I think you should be prepared for that. I think in the transition, when you want to retire, that's a different story, because you have a bit more time. Then you talk a lot to the family members, so it's kind of easier, I would say. Because there is no pressure, but again, I believe that the role of the CFO is to ensure that if somebody is not interested, or it can be not capable of doing, to support and to run the company as the owner would be still there. So
basically, to advise the owner to have a management team, a management board, advisory board, some kind of board. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
To help him run the business,
and to continue his legacy on the board that is aligned with his perception, his views, and can support the next generation. In terms of future plans, and we are currently in an environment that is facing digitalization more and more. What specific, let's say, technologies do you think that could the family business be exposed to, and how does this type of company approach IT aspects? Are they open, or they are let's say more oriented to pen and paper activities?
I think what I've seen, that is a lot of and I don't think it's just a characteristic of the family-owned business, but in general, I believe that the I would say mid-sized business, where I would we are in large corporates for banks, but still comparing to the big multinationals, I consider the business rather mid-size, in very highly competitive environment. So retail, e-com, this type of things is very competitive. And I see in general kind of a deficit in the investments behind IT, because I think first of all there is the thing, it runs, so why touch it? So that's one part of the story. Or the second part of the story is very expensive, and you need a different skill. Either you hire consultants, or you need a different skill set of the people. So IT experts, and it could be BI, data analytics, even developers, they're expensive and they're hard to find, especially for this type of family-owned business. They want to either go to startups, or they are stuck with the big companies. So I think it's quite expensive for, especially if you have a backlog. So then you realize that the ticket is quite expensive at the first. To change the ERP for a group of companies, or five companies, that's quite an expensive challenge. So I would say they are generally underinvested in IT, both in manpower and in technology, and it's something that you need to tackle by selecting the projects that create the first add value to the customers, and then internally. What I face the most is that you can be talking a lot about digitalization, but first of all, typically every type of this project, first you need to invest, and then it pays off with maybe less people, better customer experience, etc., etc. And that the first part, and I don't mean just putting the money on the table, but putting the right people behind it, both internal and external. And that I think is most complicated than putting the money on the table. That you need the internal stakeholders to co-run at least these type of projects, be invested in them, and know how the technology works. So you will not implement AI fully from external, or if you don't digitalize accounting team, or you don't run a startup BI analytics, if you don't know what you want to analyze, you cannot have BI analytics or this type of things without knowing what you want the AI to help you with. You will not be able to do these type of projects. So for me, it's about upskilling the people, so then they are themselves the advocates of new technologies and etc. That's first the mindset, and then you can start running the big projects. But I believe that the digitalization is the challenge all across the mid-sized companies, and not easy because of the upfront investment in the new ERPs, new technologies, and etc.
Thank you. We're pretty much towards the end of this interview, and I would like to have just a last question, if I may. From your perspective, what would be, let's say, your personal advice towards the Romanian family-owned companies that are in this current process of changing the mindset, and they're looking for bringing on a CEO, bringing on a CFO, bringing on internal audit, choosing an auditor, so on and so forth? What would be, let's say, your main thoughts in your, let's say, personal or professional advice?
What I would say in general is that if you want to grow, you need to slowly but surely professionalize the management, the ways of working, because it will catch you someday in the future. It doesn't mean that you need to buy for your salesman a Ferrari, but you need to invest and upskill also within internal. So my experience is that when you start a business or that people of course invest into the customer facing things, because the customer is the one that interferes, and if there is somebody holding the rails of the electricity so that the customer can see a nice visual, whatever, that's the start. But at the end of sooner or later, you will realize that you need to start also building what we call back office and other sexy functions that, according to many owners, they do nothing. Why do I need 5 accountants? Can I do it 2? Why do I need a CFO if I've been living doing it on my own with the chief accountant? Why do I need internal audit when I was signing every invoice, or I trust the people? So I think it's really if you want to grow and outperform and be the leader either in the country, region, or whatever, and you have a significant ambition, you need to start bringing people that they might not pay off from the day one, because CFO will not double the sales. He will ensure the continuity, the continuous value creations. But of course, if you hire a new sales guy, probably you can measure easily his performance rather than internal auditor. You will not bring, as an internal auditor, you don't bring direct money that you double the sales, increase the EBITDA, etc. You bring some security, compliance, also both internal and external. But this you have to realize that you need to build a solid foundation for the company growth.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much. So pretty much this was it for today from our podcast CFology. As I said, filmed directly at Cluj-Napoca during the CFO conference in Cluj. Thank you all. Thank you for your presence here and your good ideas, and see you soon.
Mulțumim că ați ascultat CFology, un podcast Business Mark.